All right, I always like to step back, and the way we're going to step back is going back to what we did a couple weeks ago, and that was to identify the different operating systems that are available to us. The most popular operating system platform is the Windows operating system. Can anybody tell me why Windows is the most popular? It is losing traction. It is losing market shares, but with the advent of the new Slate or Surface computer, I believe Windows is going to actually gain its traction back. When we start looking at tablets, we start to see one of the biggest reasons why Windows became popular. In today's tablet choices, we lack software that works with our desktop, correct? Wouldn't it be nice that we can use Microsoft Office on our tablets, if you will? I mean, that's got to be one of the biggest reasons. And so the lack of software. So Microsoft released their new tablet, if you will, their Slate, and it's supposed to be compliant with all PC applications. So whatever you're used to using on your desktop, you can use on the Slate. So hence, why is Windows the most popular platform? Software choices. In fact, in your history video that you guys or the PowerPoint that you guys went through, Bill Gates and Paul Allen first established what? What was their claim to fame? And you'll see Bill Gates today. Basic, which is a programming language. In fact, you'll be using Basic today. A small Basic, but nevertheless Basic. What's another operating choice that we have? This choice is really proprietary. In fact, it's only allowed to be installed through approved hardware. In fact, I can install it using the VirtualBox software that we've been using. What company that you know is very proprietary, very controlling? What's that? Yeah, Apple. And what type of, what's their name of their operating system? OS. And we're up to version 10. It's actually like version 10 dot something. I think we're at Mountain Lion, if I remember correctly. What makes them so unique compared to like Windows? If you're choosing between different computers, why would you choose Mac or an Apple over a PC? What's that, Trey? Security reasons? Ease of use, yep. So a lot of people believe that you get better performance. Safer. And it's easier. Which ones cost more? Windows or PC or Windows or Macs? Macs. Why? It's proprietary, and hence you only have one company to go to, so there's no competition. Whereas in Windows, or PCs, I should say, you have a slew of choices, whether it's Dell or HP or so on and so forth. Correct? All right. What's another choice when it comes to operating systems? One that we're going to be using today. Linux. What is its claim to fame? What's that, Trey? Open source, yes. Open and free. In fact, Linux comes from another, it's a variation of this operating system, which is where OS X basically comes from. Unix claim of fame is it's portable. Now, like I said last time, portable doesn't mean you can pick it up and take it places, but rather it can be installed on a lot of different platforms. These three operating systems share in essence the same kernel. The kernel is the core of every operating system. The reason why OS X is very secure and extremely powerful is because it uses the kernel of Unix. Unix has been around since the 60s. It was created by Bell Labs. And their concept that they were doing was dealing with mainframes. Have centrally processing devices located somewhere, and then everybody access it through a terminal. We're getting back to that concept. Like I was introducing operating systems to you a couple weeks ago, I said this whole mainframe thing is going to be coming back to us. We're calling it cloud computing. And for X number of dollars a month, you guys can lease processing power from a company anywhere in the world. Now, why might you do something like that? Well, you want to crack your significant other's Facebook account. Cracking passwords require a lot of processing power. Now, you might not want to go out and spend $100,000 on some kind of supercomputer, but maybe for 25, 30 bucks a month, you can lease a botnet to cause harm. And that's the growing concern that we're having. We are connected together through the internet, and hence we can share resources and even cause harm to other people through cyber attacks. For the first time in history, I'm finding it really interesting. Well, the first time publicly in history, I should say. We're seeing countries wage wars with companies. Anybody know what I'm talking about? China and Google are at each other's throats. It's a war that's been going on. It's very quiet, and there's no casualties, other than maybe your job. Because if China can steal all these patents and all this technology and produce it over there, then what's the point of hiring any Americans? So it's a big effect to our economy, and there's a growing concern about this. But nevertheless, we're back to this concept of operating systems and how Unix is being implemented in these other two to create this cloud-based computing environments. So more on that later when we get to the internet. But what I want you guys to understand is these are the unique properties that make these operating systems themselves. Now, of course, all operating systems have what? 7 core functions? What was the first thing that they have to manage? Well, I wouldn't say the first as in like do this first, but what is one of the things they have to manage? You. Remember the picture. Do not forget this. It's you interacting with the operating system and the operating system interacting with hardware and software. Okay? Now, how does the operating system interact with you? That's going to be what we call the interface. But today's modern operating systems are handling multi-users. Now they're even handling multi-users simultaneously. The next thing that they're trying to push out with Windows 8 is they're handling multi-operating systems with multiple users simultaneously. We call them workspaces. What's the next thing that they're going to be responsible for handling? Go back to all that hardware. Because remember, I told you if the hardware is the muscles of the machine, then what's the software? The intelligence, the brains? So, pick out any one of those hardware devices that we've studied in the past 5 weeks. Okay, motherboard, call it I/O management, okay? Because your motherboard's going to have ports, slots, and everything else to plug into. So the motherboard's just a connector, a common platform for everything to plug into, okay? So I/O, the way they handle that is through special software called drivers or through a feature called plug and play. Input-output devices, your mouse, your keyboard, your printer, even your network interface card, I guess, could be considered one of those I/O devices. Now, I've been throwing this terminology called platform out quite a bit. Going back to the diagram, you interact with the operating system. The operating system acts as a platform for hardware and software. By definition, a platform is the processor plus the operating system. In fact, instead of calling them PCs, we used to call them Wintels, because there are Windows operating systems with Intel processors. Now, this line's getting blurry because When Apple came out with their first computer, they used Motorola processors. They didn't use Intel's. Now, any one of these operating systems can run on the x86 or Intel processors. Now, I'm telling you x86 because Intel isn't the only company that makes processors. You have AMD and a few others. And by the way, this whole world of processors have been evolving a mile a minute with mobile platforms. ARM processors, Snapdragon, so on and so forth, are all in the business of making tiny little processors for your smartphone to be as powerful as your desktop. So your operating system has to manage the CPU. We talked about several ways it does that. One was through time sharing. The other one was through pipeline. And the last one was through multitasking, right? Number 4, what else does the operating system have to coordinate, manage, or control? Memory. Today you'll see that when we get into programming. Well, it's like my hand's 1 mile ahead of me. 5. We'll be doing it today. Files. Files, folders, file management. 6, for the whole reason why you guys are getting attracted to PCs or tablets or smartphones. Sharing resources, communicating with other devices across the network. Operating systems have to start being aware of this. And then 7, we said security, correct? Very testable. I'll be asking guys to pick like 4 out of the 7 or something like that on your next exam. Get to know them. When you go to look at different operating systems, these are the things that you use to compare each other. How well does OS X manage the processor versus Windows? In a Windows-based environment, we count on the programmer to make their applications multi-threaded oriented so that they can run on multiple cores simultaneously. In OS X, Apple took the approach that they use something called Grand Central Station. And all these programs come in there, and Apple looks at them and says, oh yeah, you can be threaded, and I have a multi-core processor, so let me do that for you. The give or take here is that the operating system is smart enough to realize the different tasks that the program is accomplishing, and they're going to utilize the processor more efficiently. In a Windows system, you have to update your software, and you're counting on the programmer making changes to their software to be more compliant with your processor. In Linux, if you know what you're doing, you can change the code so it works with your hardware. This portable nature is what was inspired by Unix. Because at the time Bell created this, they knew computers are going to be changing a mile a minute. There was rumor that we're going to have PCs. So they went from mainframes to microcomputers to finally PCs. Today, like I said, we're going to be jumping into a new operating system in which we're going to be focusing on how they coordinate this, and more importantly, generally, how to use the operating system to create files and folders. All right. So did everybody get a little handout on creating some files and folders? Does everybody have on their screen the Linux operating system up on? And remember, this is virtualized, meaning I'm running an operating system inside of an operating system. To do this, I had to have special software. As we're finding out, software gives our computer purpose. This kind of technique is really cool because it allows me to experiment. And as a programmer, I love this virtual machine stuff because I don't have to go out there and buy an iPhone, buy an Android, or buy a new slate. I can write apps on devices I don't even own, see how well they work, and then put it on the App Store. In fact, those 3 devices that I mentioned to you all have a different operating system. In fact, An iPad or an iPhone uses the iOS, right? Which is not the OS 10. Different operating system, hence different platform. And if you have a different platform, what does that mean about the software that runs on your Mac? Will it run on your iPhone or your iPad? No. Windows took this different approach. In the new Surface or the new Slates, they are embedding Windows into that, the whole actual operating system. They call it the Embedded Edition or Compact Edition, CE, but nevertheless, they're trying to get your Windows software to be more friendly with the tablet. Why are they trying to do that? Because they're behind the 8 ball. They lost sales. And now the only thing that they have that no other tablet has at this point is whatever you installed on your PC, it will work on your tablet. And that's a good selling point, right? Especially if you're a gamer. Could you imagine how games are going to change? Those little addicts will be able to take their pads everywhere they go, and they won't be able to stop. As long as they're not playing while they're driving, I'm good. New ad. Don't play games while you're driving, or what does that be considered? GUD or GD, driving under the influence, driving under gaming. I don't know. You guys get the idea. The other operating system is the Android platform, right? That's actually a variation of Linux, which is why Android devices are a lot cheaper, because their operating system is free. And they have to keep it that way when it comes to Google selling an Android device, because of the whole open source GNOME license, which we talked briefly about last week when we were installing software, the end user license agreement. Software developers have license agreements too that they have to follow. By the way, we group all those together so I can finish this one little bit of theory as embedded or special purpose operating systems, okay? So let's get into this. Where would you guys go to manage your files using Ubuntu? Where would you think you would do? Now in Windows, you have this taskbar down here at the bottom of your screen, correct? And in Ubuntu, do they have a taskbar? Yeah, it's right here on the side. All right, what do we call this type of interface? You notice I didn't write this on the board. I said there are 3 types of interfaces. We're moving away from this one into more of a natural interface. But what is this interface called? GUI, or a graphical user interface. Now look, I'm not expecting you guys to know Linux. Most of you have never used it before, but look what you're able to do. You assume that this area over here has to be similar to this area down here. Now, Apple and Windows got a lot of shit for each other, because people are like, well, I hate Windows. They're constantly copying off of OS or Mac's operating system. But there's a reason behind that, and there's a justification for this. And this is the reason why they haven't been able to go to court with each other and saying, look, this is plagiarism. I mean, do you guys think this is plagiarism? The fact that Windows has this taskbar here and Linux has it there. Do you think it's plagiarism that GM, Ford, Chrysler, and all those other auto manufacturers have a steering wheel on the left side that has a horn on it and a brake pedal and a gas pedal all in the same position? And you know what? They use PRND for your automatic transmission, correct? And what makes that great? So that when you guys jump from car to car, you don't have to have another degree in driving a vehicle, correct? So the learning curve is quicker, shorter. Likewise, if you guys had to take a guess and you wanted to load an application up in Ubuntu, the way you would load an application in Windows, you'd click on the Windows button. How would you guys load an application when it comes to Ubuntu? Click on the Ubuntu button. Go ahead, click on that. And look at that. They have a little search box. And underneath that search box, they have applications. Well, if I click on my Start button, which you guys don't have to, but if I go to do that, looks very similar, right? They have a search box right here, and then above it is all programs. Okay. Not very many choices here, correct? What if you want to go browse the web? What might you type in the search box? Oh, internet, Firefox? Let's try internet, just see what they do. Do you see how when you search for something, it doesn't have to be the exact name? The other thing I thought was pretty cool is they went on the internet and they found you some books or other things that you might be interested. But do you guys have Firefox? Go ahead, click on that. Now, it's going to be a little bit slow because things are being virtualized, correct? Is it the same Firefox as the Firefox you'd use in Windows? Should be. The programmers that developed this this web browser, had to make sure that the application would work across platforms. That is, it would work in Linux, Windows, and even OS X. So how might I go to a website like Engadget.com? I can go right in here and type in the URL, or I could Google it. I'm just going to type in the URL, which is going to be engadget.com, and hit enter. Do you expect this web page to look any different than it would be in a Windows Firefox? No. We'll get into the reason why that is when we get into web development. All right, let's go to another website. Let's go to Kickstarter. Do you guys know what Kickstarter is? Actually, let me just open up a new tab just to show you that tab browsing works just as fine. Does anybody know what Kickstarter is? You guys are business people and you guys don't know what Kickstarter is? How many times have you sat back and said, you know, I have a great idea, but I don't have the money or the time to do it? But you have this awesome idea. Every day of my life. Who said that? Mitch? Was that who? Trey? All right. Then this site's for you. What it is more of like a social networking for raising money. If you have an idea, you go ahead, throw it out here. That's how I found my little swivel. I was looking for something out there that would automate, be like a automated camera person, if you will. And I stumbled across Kickstarter. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I did some research. And I'm like, this is the coolest site. I'm constantly coming up with ideas, but I'm always saying to myself, I wish I had the money. If I only had a couple of $1,000s to be able to do this. And that's what this does. If there's a project, a movie, a book, or something that you want to do, just post your idea in Kickstarter. Exploit it. Do a market campaign on it. And people from all over the world might find that that's a great idea. I mean, there's all these suggestions for, I'll just type in iPhone. And you might want a shield protector that's super strong. And so you click on this link, and I know this is well beyond the course. And what's going to happen is it's going to take you to this person's page. You can watch the video of what they're trying to sell you or what they would like to produce. And you can see they have 2,500 backers. That means these are people that have contributed money. Now, as you see, this is a whole global thing once this page loads up. And then over here underneath it, there'll be different perks. So you can drop $10 and you might get a free t-shirt. Drop $100 when they produce this product, you get it. You might go for $200. The idea is what I'm going back to. We live in a connected society. It doesn't matter what operating system people are using. What's driving us to use technology? Sites like this. Sites like Facebook, like Twitter, or any other thing else that keeps us connected because we're social creatures. We should not be limited to our connection by our own preference, our own choice. If you're a Windows person, knock your socks off. We have to agree to certain standards. So let's close out of this. By the way, if you wanted to see the backing, I just have to scroll down and it should come. You should see more of it. But beyond the scope, I know. Let's close out of this. Now, I was just going to do a Windows thing, and I was going to come up to the upper right corner of the window, where do I have to go in Linux? Now, by the way, not all Linux operating systems are the same. They have their own different variations. But go ahead, click on that upper left corner and hit close. Do you notice, though, they kept to the 3-button style? The reason why a lot of people like Ubuntu is because it's really close to what they are familiar with. All right, let's create a file. Last maybe week or 2 weeks ago, I had a student ask me, is there any way I can use OpenOffice instead of the actual Microsoft Office? And the answer to that was no. Although OpenOffice offers you products like spreadsheets, word processing, databases, they are not exactly like Microsoft Office. Why do we jam Microsoft Office down your throat, especially after I gave you the speech that we should not limit you guys by your own personal preferences? We should make platforms cross-compliant. So why am I saying to you guys, except for Office programs? When it comes to productivity programs, you must use Microsoft Word, Excel, Access, and PowerPoint. Can anybody tell me that? I wouldn't go that far. That's what it is. Although English is not the official language for our country, it is the official language of business, correct? And so if you want to be productive, get a job, you learn English. Likewise, if you want to be productive and be able to communicate successfully in the business world, you must know how to use the Office application. Does that mean you must go and buy it at home, especially when you're just a college student and you're broke for money? No. In other courses, your English course, any other classes you do research paper, OpenOffice, or what they call Libre now, will work just fine for you guys. In fact, over here on the left side, you should have something that looks like a document. What color did they use? What color does Word? And what would this program be? The one that you guys are learning? Yeah, Excel. What would this program be? PowerPoint, yeah. All right, let's click on that. It's called Writer. It's a word processor. Surprise, surprise. You guys should be able to change your fonts, your font size, the attributes, the alignments. To me, it's good. It's not perfect, but you can't complain when it's free. And the nice thing about it is it's open source. If you want to add to it, and if you know how to program, you can. All right, now you guys have a handout. I ran out of copies, but I believe your handout said we need to create like a contact. Is that right? It's the first one, the one without the colored lines. So let's do that. So I'm going to type in my name, and then I'm going to type in my email. You notice I'm not teaching you guys how to do this because it's awfully the same. In fact, the key in to being successful as a programmer is when you write code, you want to try to make the interface as natural as possible. And if that requires using the same colors or the same icons or the same layout, then do so. Unless you can come out with a layout that's better and more intuitive, stick to the social norm. Okay? Now, I'm not a big supporter with going with the grain, but when it comes to people that don't know how to use computers or when they're trying to learn something new, they need to have some kind of foundation to build off of. Right? Let's just change our font for your name just to show you that it's nothing too elaborate. So I'm going to highlight it. Then I'm going to come up to this box that says font name. And I'm going to scroll down until I find something that's somewhat pleasant. I really don't care. Let me choose the typewriter. I'm going to increase the size of this so it's 16 point. Once again, it's still highlighted, right? And I'm going to change it so it's bold and italicized. Now I'm going to highlight both lines and change the alignment so it's centered. Would this work in a pinch? Absolutely. If your if your English instructor told you when you're writing a composition for this course, it's got to be word processed, and you don't want to go out and spend $200 for Microsoft Office? But what if they told you the file that you create must be a docx? And what have we learned so far? In order to create a docx, what program must you use? Word, 2007 or beyond, right? Let's go up to File. Oh, where is File? Come up to the very top bar. If you hover over it, so it should say LibreOffice or something like that, or LibreWriter, but when you hover over it, do you get the menus now? Yeah, they're just being cute. All right, so go over here to File, which I have to say I'm not a big fan of that, because if you don't see it, how do you know it's there, right? So I'm a little disappointed with that, but you have to take your cursor, you got to move it up there and hover it, and it's like, oh, look at it magically appear. So now you're wondering, where can you move your mouse to find things? That's sort of silly. If you got a switch to turn on the lights in the room, turn it on, don't use a flashlight. All right, so click on File, come down here and click Save As. Remember the three things that we need when we save something, right? A name, a location, and a type. All right, let's call this Contact. I think that's what they told us to do. Now, I can't remember. Did this have to be in a folder called 1390, or was this its own file? It was just, what's that? Were you guys able to click on File and do Save As? Oh, did it work then? Okay. It's a fluke with VMs. It happens. If I could install this whole thing, I would do it, but then I'd get in trouble. So we're just experimenting with, wow, nothing's really that different. So we go to Documents, double click on that. And then scroll down. It says File Type. Do you guys have that box down there? Click on that. And now you guys have a list of all the different file formats that this program will allow you to save it to. Scroll down until you find Microsoft Word docx. Do you guys have that as an option? Okay, then click Save. Now they're saying, how do you want to save this? We want to use the Microsoft Word because our instructor told us it has to be in a Word format, correct? So let's use that. Now, what does that mean to you now? Look at the title bar. Does it say contact.docx? Wonderful. But as a student, what does that mean to you? What should it mean? That I can email it to my instructor and it meets their qualifications without having to go out and buy commercial grade software. Now, what do you get by buying commercial grade software? Support. But that used to be a selling point back in the day when we didn't have the internet and we didn't have somebody to talk to get help. Today, anytime you guys get stuck on a problem, what should you do? YouTube, Google it, right? You think there are other people out there that use this software? Absolutely. So we are moving away from commercial grade software to more of an open attitude because this whole network philosophy, if you will. All right, let's close out of this file. I'm going to click on that little orange button with the X symbol in it. Now I got to create a folder. Where are you guys going to go to create folders? Over on the left side, click on the folder, the home folder. There we go. All right, let's go click on Documents over on the left in this little hierarchy. Yeah, it's the quirks with VMs. You know, both operating systems are trying to control your mouse. And so when you slide off the screen, the other operating system's going to grab it. All right, so how do you create a file? Or sorry, a folder where you already made files? So how do we create some folders? Right-click anywhere in the white. What are you going to do now? Very good. We're going to call this one CSIT space 1390 and hit enter. How am I going to move this file into that folder? Thank you. Graphical user interfaces, right? GUIs. All right, so let's open up the 1390 folder and create another folder called labs. Am I doing pretty good? This is just off of memory, so right-click anywhere in the white, come down here, click on new folder. Click on labs. I should be having you do this so I can just walk around. All right. What else do we need to do? You guys need to do some research, right? You guys need to create some files, one for petabyte, then there's extra byte or whatever, then it's the PB, EB, YB, is that right? I think we're on like step number 4, step number 3. Yeah. All right, so do that. In fact, only do it for one. I think you guys are getting the gist. So I want you guys to go open up Firefox, Google one of those, and create another file, and put it in the folder called labs. And when you get done doing that, we will compress these. So we're going to go to Google. We're going to type in PB. So a petabyte is something with a whole bunch of zeros after it, right? So I highlighted this. How do you think I'm going to copy that? How would you copy that? Control C or right click and choose copy. Either or, and both would work. Let me minimize that. And then I found out that a petabyte is worth 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I need to save this as a text file, is that what they said? .txt. So I'm just going to go up to the File button, choose Save As, go to my Documents folder, open up the 1390 folder, open up Labs, and where it says name, call it pb.txt. Well, can't do the txt yet. I gotta scroll down here. File type, and look for text. And like I said, folks, I'm not expecting you guys to be Linux experts, and what I'm doing is making Linux seem too simple. It's actually more complicated, but it's even more powerful than what I'm using it for. But remember, we're trying to learn the objectives of an operating system. We just created some files and folders. We went on the internet, so it handled the network connection for us. Excuse me? Yeah, it's actually, yeah, if you will. Just think of Android as being a watered down version of Linux. The neat thing is the fact that they used Linux and not create their own operating system. So it gave Linux a huge credibility. And now we're starting to see Linux in just about every devices out there. The other thing is when your Android phone becomes even more powerful, they might forego the Android operating system and make it a full-blown Linux. There you go. Giving Apple shit for patent pendants. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. We get into that in ethics. So when that comes up, we'll talk about that. All right, folks, were you guys able to create one file? You didn't have to create all of them. Just the PB or the YB or the EB would do just fine. The idea is you were able to get onto like Firefox, do a little research in Google or whatever your chosen search engine is, and just create a simple file. We're going to compress this now. So go back to your home folder, open up your documents folder, and you guys should have a folder called CSIT 1390, right? Right-click on that folder, and you should have a compression option. All right, so let's right-click on that folder called 1390, and then you guys went down and chose what, compress? One thing that's neat about Linux, other than other operating systems, it's very open and accepting to many different formats. So when you right-click in Windows and you go to Send to Compress Folder, it only gives you one type of file, right? Zip files. But that's not the only type of compression technology out there. So over here, you're getting a whole bunch of different types of compression algorithms. Let's choose that tar.gz. Click on the arrow pointing down. And you should get a list of options that appear. Click on zip. Then when you get done doing that, hit create. And if all goes well, it should say created successfully. Click close. And I think this is pretty cool. I wish Windows would do this. They zipped it up as a box, right? And that's what I was trying to tell you guys, that a zip or compressed folder is no more than a container, a box, that can be shipped across the internet, correct? In fact, that's what you're going to do right now. I want you guys to sign into MyCCC, go to Blackboard. Under the assignments folder is a like a in-class exercise, so ICE File Management Linux. Attach that CSIT 1390.zip to that assignment, and then hit submit. Okay, folks. I know a lot of you guys are experiencing some problems with just the VM stuff crashing. It's a free open source. They're not professionally polished yet. A lot of the stuff that we're using today are first editions, if you will. They're the latest cut, and so sometimes they're buggy. But you're getting the general idea that all operating systems are, although they're not created equally, handle the core responsibilities, whether it's acting as an interface between you and the software or the hardware, managing connections to the network, allowing you guys to create files and folders, or to accomplish the task at hand. Another thing I want to show you, just like in Windows, if I click on the button, so just keep on uploading your file to that assignment, is I told you that there is a task manager in Windows that shows you how they're managing the CPU, the memory, and your secondary storage devices. Well, this operating system should have something like that too. Well, in my search box, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in CPU. And as you can see, Linux took a guess and they said, oh, you want the system monitor. And I'm just going to pop that up. You don't have to do this. This is just me showing you how those other tasks, whether it's networking, memory, or the CPU, are being managed. And just like in Windows, we have a life monitor, like a little heartbeat kind of deal. And they noticed that I have 3 CPUs. Now, I told you I actually have like 8. But didn't I fine-tune my VM to only allow 3 cores? So from what Linux can see, I only have 3. they're color-coded, and they're mapped like this over time. They're idling pretty good. Now, the reason why I'm getting 20% across the board is Windows is also taking care of that, right? Windows is being ran. Now it looks at my memory and my swap. Remember I told you when your physical memory runs out, what must the operating system do? Use virtual memory, which Linux calls swap. I love this. It's saying 0 bytes are used for the swap or the virtual memory. What does that mean about performance, guys? If you're not using any of the virtual memory and you're using all physical memory, should performance be good or poor? Should be really good, yeah. And that's what's happening. And my network, I'm not on the network, I'm not using an internet connection, I'm not browsing the web or downloading a file, and so I have 0 usage. If I have a virus, what might happen here? It might be pigged, right? So I love this tool because now you get to see your network performance, see what's coming and going. By the way, if you have a virus, most of the time it's usually the upload is going to be pegging out. And then they need to receive some information, so the download's going to be up too. So you might get both streams being up. Typically, your download, if you guys are actively involved on the internet, it's going to be higher than your upload. With maliciousware, both are normally higher because they're copying your information and sending it out, but they're also grabbing other information from around the world, right? File systems, secondary storage. They're letting me know how much of my hard drive am I using. I'm using 46% because I created a really, really tiny spice for Linux to install. So that's just a nutshell of how operating systems function and handle their 7 core features, right? Remember, we are using virtual machines. They're not perfect, but it gives you guys a general idea that you can try it without having to destroy your computer, lose your files. But my advocacy about VMs is that everybody in this room should be having virtual machines, and you should have multiple copies of Windows running. If somebody gives you a floppy disk or whatever, or they tell you to go to a website and try this thing out, or download this software and to install this software, but you don't trust the person or that software, don't do it in your native operating system. Do it in your virtual operating system. Not that I'm condoning or suggesting this, but if you are using your computer for illegal activities, fill in the blank, maybe the better place to do it is in a sandbox environment and not in your native system. This morning it took me 3 seconds to get this one installed with that Linux because I kept that core file that you guys created last week. And it was just a copy and paste for me. And I could get Trade going, I could get the other computers in the back going by just copying the file off the server and putting it right on the local computer. By keeping that copy of my virtual machine, it sort of acts like a backup of my playground. And I can instantly come in there and create that workspace. And that's what Windows 8 is introducing to the world now. Windows 8 allows you guys to create workspaces. So there's a program that you install. It first goes into the workspace. If it's prone to crashing, causing malicious behavior, then that workspace can be deleted and your core files will not be affected. What if it's a trusted program like Microsoft Office? Should Microsoft trust itself? So when you install Microsoft Office in Windows 8, it gets a core install. So that if something happens to a workspace, guess what? You don't have to reinstall Office again. Have you guys experienced this dilemma that when your computer gets infected with a virus, you're basically starting all over? You're losing all your schoolwork, all your pictures, all your videos, your music, all your applications that you've downloaded and installed. Because the easy fix is to grab that CD that came from the manufacturer, put it into your CD-ROM, boot up the computer, and just hit next, next, sure, okay. And having no clue that in that process, it's formatting the hard drive, erasing everything that you've created to that point. Now, what could you do as a way to circumvent that? back up your files, correct? But what if your backup becomes corrupted by a virus? What happens then? And so the world is moving to cloud-based computing, because with cloud-based computing, you don't need to buy all this hardware crap. What do you guys really need to interact with computers? A mouse, a keyboard, and a screen, correct? You need the I/O side of the things. Eliminate the P. If that processing, that memory, and that storage can be held somewhere else on much faster computers with more qualified technicians to maintain them, all you want to do is type out your paper. So when we get into that, we're going to be exploring cloud-based computing using Google Drive, formerly known as Google Docs. And they do have a word processor on there that can be accessed via a web browser. And if it can be accessed from a web browser, what does that mean about portability? Anywhere, anytime, on any device. And that's the goal of cloud computing. All right? So we'll get there. Let me close out of this stuff. We're no longer going to be using this. Get where I want to show you guys, and we'll probably resume this on Thursday, is that, like I said earlier, there's a big movement towards teaching coding as a secondary language in school. Throughout my conversation today with you guys, have you heard what I've been saying over and over and over? If you know how to write code, if you know how to program, then you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. I believe back in the beginning of the semester, I told you guys something like, when you're aware how something works, you can manipulate it. Leave it to Wendy to have that one figured out. Do you have your significant other down to a science? Yeah. But that's true. And computers are very faulty in this. By understanding how machines function and knowing that the hardware is just the muscles, but software is where the knowledge is. By altering a few things, you can gain somebody's password. And by the way, folks, in the information age, the nerd is the rock star. The nerd is the one with the big bank accounts. And the nerd goes to Fed Club when he gets busted. And after he does his 5-year, 10-year sentence, he's out with his millions collecting interest on some foreign bank accounts. Once again, I'm not encouraging illegal activity, but I am saying coding should be a secondary language. In a world where it depends on devices, by knowing the language, you should be able to communicate more effectively. When I went to go visit my brother over in Germany, it was the most exciting and scariest experience ever. I had my friend's youngest kid, and I think at the time he was 15 or 16. And we're over in Germany, and there's a huge time gap, for one thing. And my cell phone obviously doesn't work over in their network. And my brother's like, well, I'll pick you up from the airport, which was in Frankfurt, I think is where we landed. And I am tired. Couldn't sleep on the plane. I was right next to the wing. So all night long, all I could hear is the droning sounds of the jets. I land in Germany, exhausted, burned out. And I have to manage my friend's youngest kid and my mom. And both are great experiences just within themselves. And I'm looking all over the place, and I'm like, well, Joe told me he's going to meet me here. Frankfurt's a huge international airport. And I'm trying to read these signs. Nothing makes sense. And then I'm trying to do what we did today in our operating systems, looking at visual clues. Like maybe a circle with a line through it, like, don't go there. I don't know how many times somebody has had to pull me out of something saying off limits and their own language and looking at me, and I'm like, and they're like, you know, And I'm just like, okay, I guess I don't go down that door. And so I'm just bouncing from place to place, finding some place that works, right? Because none of the signs were in English. And I don't know how I found my brother, but it was just by the grace of God that we stumbled across each other because it was huge. And everybody I was communicating with, I don't know if they knew English or they just refused to speak it because I was just arrogant. And I was thinking, life would be great because I have my droid and that I'll speak into my droid and it'll come out the language that they understand. They would speak into my droid and it'll come back in English because it was working great in the States. So I have this plan. Well, it didn't work. My droid doesn't have the processing power that you need to translate to any language you'd like. So how is it working in the States? It would record my voice, upload it onto the internet, process it via this cloud-based computing, and then send it back in the other language. Over there, they use a different network. They're not using the 3G or the 4Gs that we use here. They use something called GSM. And when you try to connect on Wi-Fi, it's in a foreign language. So I don't know what username looks like or password looks like, let alone what they are or what to put in there. Because, some of those public sites, they say, do this, do that, but they're written instructions. Good luck trying to read that. And so this is what's being said. Would I had a better experience if I spoke German? Absolutely. And my whole trip, the country that I liked the most, I think we were at like 12 of them. I was there for a month maybe, was the UK. And the only reason why I enjoyed that the most is because I could interact with other people, read the signs, eat the right food, and not really worry about my friend's kid, Oh yeah, you're going down the road, sure. You're not going to get lost. Other than their damn subways, but that's just a different story. That's just me being country. So in this video, you guys will learn about this big movement. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, which you guys know, right? The infamous Facebook creator. They're all advocating that coding should be a secondary language.
I was 13 when I first got access to a computer.
My parents bought me a Macintosh in 1984 when I was 8 years old.
I was in 6th grade.
I learned to code in college.
Freshman year, first semester, intro to computer science.
I wrote a program to play tic-tac-toe.
I think it was pretty humble beginnings. I think the first program I wrote asked things like, what's your favorite color? Or how old are you?
I first learned how to make a green circle and a red square appear on the screen.
The first time I actually had something come up and say, hello world, and I made a computer do that. It was just astonishing.
Learning how to program didn't start off as wanting to learn all of computer science or trying to master this discipline or anything like that. It just started off because I wanted to do this one simple thing. I wanted to make something that was fun for myself and my sisters. And I wrote this little program and then basically just add a little bit to it. And then when I needed to learn something new, I looked it up either in a book or on the internet and then added a little bit to it.
It's really not unlike kind of playing an instrument or something, or playing a sport. It starts out being very intimidating, but you kind of get the hang of it over time.
Coding is something that can be learned, and I know it can be intimidating. A lot of things are intimidating, but what isn't?
A lot of the coding that people do is actually fairly simple. It's more about the process of breaking down problems than, sort of coming up with complicated algorithms as people traditionally think about it.
You don't have to be a genius to know how to code. You need to be determined.
Addition, subtraction, that's about it.
You should probably know your multiplication tables.
You don't have to be a genius to code. Do you have to be a genius to read?
Even if you want to become a race car driver or play baseball or build a house, all of these things have been turned upside down by software.
What it is, computers are everywhere. You want to work in agriculture? Do you want to work in entertainment? Do you want to work in manufacturing? It's just all over.
2013. We all depend on technology to communicate, to bank, information, and none of us know how to read and write code.
When I was in school, I was in this after-school group called the Whiz Kids. And when people found out, they laughed at me and, all these things. And I'm like, man, I don't care. I think it's cool. And, I'm learning a lot. And some of my friends have jobs.
Our policy is literally to hire as many talented engineers as we can find. The whole limit in the system is just that there just aren't enough people who are trained and have these skills today.
To get the very best people, we try to make the office as awesome as possible.
We have a fantastic chef,
Free food,
breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
free laundry.
Snacks, even places to play and video games and scooters. There's all these kind of interesting things around the office and places where people can play or relax or go to think or play music or be creative.
Whether you're trying to make a lot of money or whether you just want to change the world, computer programming is an incredibly empowering skill to learn.
I think if someone had told me that software is really about humanity, that it's really about helping people by using computer technology, it would have changed my outlook a lot earlier.
To be able to actually come up with an idea and then see it in your hands and then be able to press a button and have it be in millions of people's hands. I think we're the first generation in the world that's really ever had that kind of experience.
Just to think that you can start something in your college dorm room and you can have a set of people who haven't built a big company before come together and build something that 1 billion people use as part of their daily lives is just crazy to think about, right? It's humbling and it's amazing.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
I think it's amazing. I think it's the closest thing we have to a superpower.
Great coders are today's rock stars. That's it.